Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. American Comics. Start by binding the Super Seminary clock. Chapter 41. Now Li Qingyan has gradually been able to understand what kind of path he is taking. That is a path led by one's own thoughts and assisted by the technology of the big clock. Only Li Qingyan can think of it, and big clock can do it. When Li Qingyan comes up with something that the big clock can't do, it will be a completely new research topic. And by that time, I believe that Li Qingyan will finally reach the pinnacle of super god technology. Know, own, learn, fully master. These are 4 stages, a process of 3 improvements. What Li Qingyan has to do now is to repeat these 3 processes again and again. Know what to do. Have the appropriate technology and ideas. Learn to apply this technique. Then master this ability completely. Now, Li Qingyan has to wait for the void engine to be manufactured. He will participate in the whole process, watching the big clock control these intelligent mechanical arms, converting void matter into substantial materials bit by bit, and finally making it into a void engine bit by bit. There is a communication invitation from Congressman Wang Yan. The big clock reminded, but its action of creating void engines did not stop. Member, will you postpone it? Li Qingyan remembered that when Nick Fury came over, he had contacted him. Later, the cosmic cube decided to be handed over to Thor, god of thunder. S.H.I.E.L.D. gave up the idea of taking the cosmic cube, and all the soldiers deployed outside the manor by the congressman were withdrawn. Originally, I planned to cooperate with him, use the power of the country to strengthen myself, and at the same time help the country develop. But now, Li Qingyan looked at the mechanical arms in front of him, and he already had a new direction. Directly through mechanization, like the god of death, Karl, it is possible to achieve self-improvement and subsequent overall upgrade. With the technology of big clocks and its powerful computing support, it is easy to operate these machines to make various tools. If the scale expands in the future, new robots will be created to assist. They can also replace human labor, and they will do better than ordinary human labor. After all, Li Qingyan didn't intend to upgrade others to super soldiers. Tell him to come directly and I'll take a look at the specific situation before making a decision. In the end, Li Qingyan did not refuse directly. The big clock sent a message to the congressman, and Li Qingyan also stopped the research and design of the factory, and took back the void matter and the semi-finished void engine to the dark matter plane space. Although Li Qingyan could know if anyone wanted to take advantage of his laboratory. But there are a lot of weird guys in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. What if 1 or 2 just escape the exploration of the big clock and come to the laboratory? Those artificial intelligence devices without artificial intelligence programs were seen to be fine. But if the void engine is seen and the void material is stolen, it will be a huge loss. In fact, when Li Qingyan was engaged in manufacturing the void engine, and when he was making the super gene potion, he had the big clock hide the spatial coordinates and block all possible exploration information before proceeding. Odin, Heimdall, etc. can directly see the situation in the laboratory through the obstacles of the universe and objects. Soon, the congressman arrived. Along with Counselor Yan, there was also a small team of men in black. All of them were wearing standard black uniforms and looked very mysterious. This is obviously a special group of people under the national agency. Their detailed data information was directly read by the big clock and displayed in front of Li Qingyan. Finally, I have a chance to meet you, Mr. Li. Counselor Yan is still very polite. Although his status is not low, Li Qingyan is a real superpower and can still defeat people from the divine realm like Loki. Those who are capable should be treated with courtesy. No need to be so polite. Li Qingyan received him politely. Sit down. After inviting the congressman to sit down, the men in black, following him were also sitting around separately one by one. He didn't stand, and he didn't always stay by Counselor Nobu's side. Although their eyes are still fixed on Li Qingyan all the time, they are always on guard against all dangers. But at least on the surface, it doesn't feel very guarded. He was the one who stood directly next to Counselor Nobu from the beginning, guarding him like a door god. This arrangement can be regarded as a gesture to show their trust in Li Qingyan. I didn't know that the member of parliament extended. Just call me Wang Yan. Counselor Yan interrupted Li Qingyan's words. Abroad, when those guys call me in English, They like to address me by my position first and then my name. But we are at home, so we can be casual. Counselor Yan. Wang Yan said. Okay. Li Qingyan is not entangled either. It's just a title in the first place, so there's no need to care about it so deliberately. I'll get right to the point. Wang Yan adjusted his sitting posture slightly, and then said seriously. We have investigated and found out that you are a person with supernatural abilities, and you also have some extremely high-end technology in your hands. So, we want to cooperate with you. We can provide you with some of the things you need, and you provide us with some equivalent technology. It's mutually beneficial between us. Wang Yan's attitude is still very different from those high-ranking American congressmen. The American country wanted to get Stark's Iron Man technology, so it directly notified him to go to court for trial. Directly on the grounds of endangering national security, it forced Stark to unconditionally contribute the corresponding technology. And now, Wang Yan is talking about cooperation and mutual exchange. The first point is a very good attitude. Isn't forcing you to consider the country, and I didn't define you as a threat directly. Although this strategy was made, it also took into account Li Qingyan's own strength and the factor that he would not be afraid of threats. But at least, the intuitive feeling given to people will not be too bad. Cooperation and win-win, mutual benefit. Li Qingyan understood Wang Yan's intention and the country's attitude. But the result of the direct spread of super god technology is not necessarily good. Everything that the Super God Academy did in the Dinor civilization is a good example. The technology I master is far beyond the current society. You must all understand the simple principle of promoting the growth of rice seedlings. Li Qingyan finally decided not to drag the country into the water. At least at this stage, he will not. I understand. Wang Yan is a smart man. He can understand the meaning and concerns of Li Qingyan's words. Although I can't provide you with advanced technology, I can still provide you with some simple help. Li Qingyan didn't plan to ask Wang Yanbai to make a trip. After all, people come with greeting gifts. In their car outside, a very special metal was prepared. It was a meteorite from space that had landed on this land for a long, long time. The officials knew that this piece of metal was special, but they didn't know what to do with it, so they thought of giving it to Li Qingyan. The data analyzed by the big clock shows that the metal contained in this meteorite is an alloy produced under extremely special circumstances in the universe. Its melting point is extremely high and its defensive properties are excellent. If it is used to make armor, it is a good material. Although it may not be as good as the silver armor and dark alloy armor of Super God Universe, it is not much different. If part of the dark matter can be found and integrated into the armor later, the armor's defensive performance will be greatly improved. Li Qingyan is already making weapons. It would be just right to use this metal to make a set of armor. Oh, Mr. Li, are you willing to help? Wang Yan couldn't hide a trace of joy on his face. I can't provide you with too advanced technology, but I can speed up the progress of some of the things you are currently researching. Li Qingyan said. I will send you a document later, which will contain relevant information. When the time comes, you will understand after reading it. Li Qingyan didn't tell Wang Yan here what he gave him. But Wang Yan understood that since the other party gave it to him, it must not be something bad. Moreover, the most important thing is Li Qingyan's attitude. At least he didn't treat them as coldly as he did Shield. Thinking of Shield, Wang Yan's mind suddenly changed and he took another careful look at Li Qingyan. Shield was still entangled with Li Qingyan not long ago. But this time, not long after Nick Fury and the others returned, something happened to Shield. He's pretty good at guessing. Li Qingyan, who could see Wang Yan's thoughts, could only shake his head helplessly at this moment. In fact, Wang Yan had guessed it. Without any evidence, Li Qingyan was clearly busy at home during this period, so how could he directly identify himself as the first target of suspicion? Moreover, if Wang Yan could guess like this, Nick Fury might also think of it when he is free. Shield is gone and Hydra has been exposed, but Li Qingyan's troubles may not be over yet. After sending Wang Yan away, he also received a special TNY alloy from Wang Yan. Li Qingyan first threw it directly into the dark matter plane space and let the big clock continue to analyze more information. Next, he had to continue to see how the big clock made the void engine. During this period of time, Li Qingyan had no time to find Hulk as a sparring partner, and Banner could finally breathe a sigh of relief and make up for the large amount of time that Hulk had occupied in the previous months. The years, in this state, entered a brief period of peace. In the blink of an eye, more than half a year has passed. More than half a year has passed in the beautiful country. The remaining agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., led by Nick Fury, are entangled with Hydra. Iron Man ushered in a powerful enemy of his, Killian, who had mastered the Extremis virus, and led his Extremis warriors to start a battle with him. Li Qingyan's side was very peaceful. In more than half a year, he not only built the Void Engine, but also built the armor. In addition, the size of the underground laboratory has expanded. A complete machinery factory gradually took shape. Outside of here, Big Clock even gave Li Qingyan 3 robot assistants. One is responsible for tidying up the manor, one is responsible for taking care of the house, and there is a top-notch chef. Banner was shocked when he saw the appearance of these robot assistants. He had known that Li Qingyan had many mysterious technologies. It is also speculated that Li Qingyan may have advanced mechanical technology. But he didn't expect that Li Qingyan could do this. Just these robots are much stronger than the steel suits and steel robots that Stark created. Each one's artificial intelligence is similar to Jarvis's level. Even in terms of human nature, it is even better. If Stark sees what you have here, I'm afraid he will be hit hard. Banner sighed. In fact, the speed of Li Qingyan's changes in the past half-year can simply be described as unbelievable. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he is the same every day. It's okay, I just did it casually. Li Qingyan is not boasting, but he really just does it casually. He just saw that there were still 3 people missing in his manor, so he asked the Big Clock to fix it. When Stark was here before, he mentioned a plan called Ultron to me. At that time, I thought it was impossible. But after seeing these robots of yours, I suddenly feel that this doesn't seem impossible. Banner said. What Stark thought of at the time was to create an independent and powerful artificial intelligence system based on artificial intelligence. This system will fundamentally protect the entire Earth. Perhaps a large number of robots will be created, which can replace the army and the police and become the guardians and managers of this world. Then, under their protection, humans can live happily and safely on this Earth forever. Once artificial intelligence has thoughts and can be independent, then artificial intelligence itself will become one of the biggest threats to mankind. Li Qingyan rejected Banner's idea. Isn't the Ultron that Stark and Banner want to develop the villain in Avengers 2? Now the key thing of this villain is still in his own dark matter plane space. That golden mind gem. By the way, the mind gem will not generate wisdom, and then use you to evolve into a more powerful and terrifying artificial intelligence, right? Li Qingyan suddenly thought of the scene where the mind gem evolved into Ultron based on the intelligent program studied by Stark and Banner. The mind gem has something similar to wisdom, but this thing has been completely sealed by me. The Great Clock is the most powerful celestial computer in the super god universe. Although the infinity gems have infinite energy, the combination of 6 is enough to control the entire universe. However, if it is just one gem, it is not a match for the Big Clock. After all, the Big Clock is a nebula-level material computer, and its functions and computing power can surpass the nebula level. The reality gem can only turn the 9 kingdoms back into darkness with the help of celestial bodies. The mind gem can't make any waves under the monitoring of the Big Clock with just its own hazy thoughts. Even though you said that, the Infinity Stones are very mysterious. Li Qingyan was still quite cautious. After all, the Infinity Stones are 6 cosmic singularities that appeared at the beginning of the universe, and then transformed by the hand of eternity. It is too special in itself. The Mind Stone has very powerful power. But it is ignorant and uncivilized in ideology. What kind of programming you give it will determine what kind of existence it will become, and since you have never tried to change it from the beginning, it will naturally have no problems. The Big Clock explained. This is the conclusion it came to after analyzing the Mind Stone. Unenlightened and uncivilized consciousness. Li Qingyan fell into a brief thought. Does it mean that it is like a newborn baby? It itself is blank and the purest appearance. When you start to instill thoughts into it and start to guide it to become a certain kind of person, it will slowly grow and take shape. But when you force a child to instill a certain concept into him, sometimes it will lead him to a completely different path. In the movie, the Mind Stone first fell into the hands of Hydra. Their thoughts were strong, and they tried to control the world with absolutely brutal and simple means. Later, Iron Man got the Mind Stone. Because of the influence of the illusion, Stark was eager to put a steel shield on the Earth, and wanted to have a powerful force to protect the world and make the world free of disputes. Banner, who participated in the development of the Mind Stone, wanted to stop all chaos and stop all wars. The joint influence of various thoughts led to the emergence of Ultron. And this Ultron only had the simplest ideas and an extremely crazy idea. Kill all the humans on the Earth, and there will be no more disputes on the Earth. Recast new life forms with steel, they will be stronger, have the power to protect the world, and absolutely obey Ultron's rule. Because they are part of Ultron. Later, the Mind Stone was embedded in Vision's head. This time, more things were integrated into the Mind Stone, and the most important point was Jarvis. The biggest difference between Jarvis and Ultron is that Jarvis was born in love. Stark was raised by his butler Jarvis. He loved Jarvis, so he named the artificial intelligence he developed Jarvis. Jarvis assisted Stark step by step from an arms dealer to a superhero willing to sacrifice himself to protect the Earth. In Jarvis's knowledge base, there is more knowledge of the world, and more ideological value can be provided to the Mind Stone. In addition, there is Thor, the god of thunder. In terms of simple mind and pure thoughts, Thor is definitely the simplest one among the superheroes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A large number of thoughts came together and recast the Vision, which changed from a pure robot like Ultron to a mechanical life form. Although it is a machine, it has thoughts that are almost the same as those of humans. It can be said that it has a soul that only life forms have. I seem to understand. When Li Qingyan thought of this, he had sorted out the idea about the Mind Stone. The Mind Stone is a kind of cosmic consciousness, but this consciousness itself will not have subjective thoughts. If you want it to have subjective thoughts, you have to actively guide it. Obviously, the big clock will not do this, and neither will Li Qingyan. Just simply treat the Mind Stone as an energy source. What's wrong with you? Banner looked at Li Qingyan in confusion. From the beginning, Li Qingyan suddenly began to be in a daze. At this moment, he nodded inexplicably, which made Banner even more confused. Nothing. Li Qingyan came back to his senses. He just thought about the problem between artificial intelligence and the Mind Stone, and then began to think about why the Mind Stone gave birth to Ultron. He thought too deeply, so he was distracted and forgot that Banner was still by his side. You rarely get distracted like this. Banner did not go into it further, but just felt that this was a rare thing. Really? Li Qingyan asked casually, and this matter seemed to have passed at this point. Rumble. There was a thunderous sound, followed by a colorful beam of light falling from the sky. Li Qingyan recognized this sound and this beam of light. Isn't this the sound and special effect when Thor appeared? However, this time Thor didn't dare to land on the lawn. Last time he came here, because he damaged the lawn, Li Qingyan took away his Meow hammer. He didn't want to be punished by Li Qingyan for this again. Well, very good. Li Qingyan nodded with satisfaction. Not only because Thor didn't damage the lawn. More importantly, Thor brought the Sword of Heavenly Destruction this time. The Sword of Heavenly Destruction was wrapped in a layer of linen, with only a black hilt exposed. After the Rainbow Bridge was repaired, I went to find a tree immediately and asked him to help you make this sword. Thor walked to Li Qingyan and handed the Sword of Heavenly Destruction over. Why don't you get a scabbard for the sword? Li Qingyan complained, but he still happily took the Sword of Heavenly Sha directly from Thor. Holding the hilt of the sword with his right hand, he used his left hand to pull away the linen cloth. At this moment, what was displayed in front of everyone was a silver sword. It is exactly the same long sword as the Sword of Heaven used by Yi in the Super Seminary anime. Except for the material, the one in Li Qingyan's hand is made of Asgard's unique metal, Uru metal. This sword contains the same power of thunder and lightning as the Thor hammer in Thor's hand. The sound of the big clock sounded in Li Qingyan's mind. Li Qingyan held the hand of Tiancha's sword and slightly mobilized the power of thunder and lightning in his body. The power of thunder and lightning in the body was poured into the body a little, and an even stronger power of thunder and lightning burst out from the Tiancha sword. As this divine power, Li Qingyan could feel that this power of thunder and lightning was from the same source as the power of thunder and lightning he possessed. This is the same divine power possessed by Thor. It's also the same divine power as the Thor's hammer. After my father knew that he was going to build a weapon for you, he also gave it the same blessing as Mjolnir. Saul said, and then he didn't forget to add, except for its appearance, this sword is actually the same as Mjolnir. The section about the Mind Stone in this chapter is purely personal. If you have any different opinions, please point them out in the comment area. Odin personally took action. Li Qingyan was a little surprised. What does he mean by this? Is he trying to show me goodwill? As the father of the gods and the king of Asgard, does he need to show me goodwill? Or do both father and son have the same idea, afraid that I will try to steal Thor's hammer again? Li Qingyan didn't quite understand why Odin was so concerned about this matter. Logically speaking, since he beat his second son and stole his own son, Odin shouldn't like him even if he didn't hate him. My father said that being able to pick up Mjolnir proves your noble character. Before Li Qingyan could express his confusion, Thor explained it himself. This time, you helped stop Loki's farce on Earth. You deserve to have such a divine weapon. So, I specifically asked Aether to make the quality of your weapon better. Li Qingyan didn't know how to start for a while. Is he a noble person? His cheating method is awesome, isn't it? The big clock directly read the detailed information of the spell on Thor's hammer through the dark data, and directly simulated the information that Thor's hammer thought through data programming. This operation is considered to deceive the spell itself, bypass the spell's obstruction, and give Li Qingyan the recognition of Thor's hammer. He himself doesn't believe that Li Qingyan has a noble character. But, AQI said that the design of your weapon seems to be incomplete. Thor suddenly remembered what the dwarf king AQI said when he was making the weapon. It was originally incomplete. Li Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief, at least he didn't have to worry about whether he had a noble character. As for the sword of heavenly killing, why did Li Qingyan choose to make this sword? Wasn't it because it was a void weapon? Now that the main body of the sword is in hand, it's time to install this void engine on it. Grabbing it in the air, a circular device appeared in Li Qingyan's hand. Without waiting for Banner and Thor to take a closer look at what the device looked like, Li Qingyan pressed it on the empty position of the Tianxia sword. The size of the circular device in that position just fit perfectly. Moreover, after the circular device was embedded, two red light spots appeared inside the device and began to rotate rapidly. Then, a red beam of light suddenly began to spread from the position of the circular device along a groove in the center of the long sword toward the tip of the sword. At this moment, a very special energy began to merge into the sword body and began to merge with the sword body. Rumble. In the sky, thunder flashed, and the hammer in Thor's hand suddenly shook at this moment. Lightning kept jumping on the hammer. This feeling was like a threatened cat, and its fur exploded. Snap. Suddenly, a thunder flashed violently on the Tianxia sword. The thunder was not very big, and the sound was not very loud. But just at the moment it appeared, just a short moment, Thor's hammer was quiet. Hey, you are also a coward sometimes. Li Qingyan looked at Thor's hammer. With a casual move, Thor's hammer actually broke free from Thor's hand without hesitation and flew into Li Qingyan's hand. At this moment, Thor couldn't help but panic. But just at this moment, he quickly restrained himself. Because Thor knew that Li Qingyan already had the sword, he should not want to steal his hammer. Probably not. Holding the long sword in the right hand and the hammer in the left hand. Obviously, the momentum of Thor's hammer was suppressed, and the thunder power that was previously emitted by itself had completely disappeared at this moment. Weapons made of Uru metal seemed to have some spirituality due to the divine power. The sound of the big clock came in Li Qingyan's mind. Li Qingyan gently raised the Tianxia sword in his right hand. The weapons made by super god technology are powerful, but they are not spiritual. Because in the super god universe, the engines and algorithms drive those weapons. The weapons in the Marvel Cinematic Universe are different. Thor's hammer, and the storm axe made later, all have a certain spirituality. Storm axe will even be jealous. In addition, there are Black Death sword, Necromancer sword, and even Infinity stones have spirituality. The reason for such differences is the difference in energy form. These things called artifacts, the power they possess is not the conventional power in the universe but divine power. Something that sounds very mysterious. Although in terms of power, They may not be comparable to the flame-level weapons in the super god universe, but they have spirituality. Li Qingyun's current Tianxia sword should have changed in this aspect. Uru metal, forged by Aether with neutron star energy, and blessed by Odin's spell. This weapon itself can be said to be an adapted version of Thor's hammer. But the addition of the Void Engine gave the Skyxia sword a new upgrade. The Void Engine has a conceptual attack method. It also has the ability to mobilize the endless energy in the universe for its use. If the upper limit of Thor's power is the upper limit of Thor's power, then the upper limit of the power of the Sword of Heaven is the upper limit of the energy in the universe. As long as the algorithm is powerful enough, it is possible to call the dark energy of the entire universe to convert it into thunder power in one breath. Angel Yan has the blessing of Sky Blade number 7, and he also made a whole one to increase the thunder power to infinity. If it were Li Qingyun, with the blessing of the big clock, wouldn't this thunder power be infinitely greater than infinity? Give it back to you. Li Qingyun threw Thor's hammer back to Thor. Although this meow meow hammer is cute, there is no doubt that the Sword of Heaven is more powerful. The combination of super god technology and Asgard's power will inevitably raise the power of this sword to another level. I said, the two weapons are almost the same except for the appearance. Thor's hammer took the meow meow hammer and said it casually, but he was relieved in his heart. Judging from Li Qingyun's current state, he is obviously very satisfied with the sword in his hand. Since he is satisfied, and it is the appearance that he likes and designed by himself, naturally no one will compete with him again. Well, from now on, no one will compete with me for Mjolnir. Thor sighed in his heart. Li Qingyun glanced at him, and the big clock had read his thoughts at this time. This guy now knows that this hammer was originally made for his sister, and this hammer will be crushed by his sister in the future. I wonder if he will cry. In the end, Li Qingyun decided not to attack Thor at this time. It's better not to tell him the truth about Meowth hammer yet. After a few years, the shadow of the incident of being deprived of his power and exiled dissipated, and he experienced more, and he was able to accept it. This person needs to experience more before he can grow better. It's time for me to go back. The Rainbow Bridge has just been repaired and the 9 kingdoms are in chaos. I have to go and put down the rebellion. Thor, the god of thunder, took a few steps back, staying farther away from Li Qingyun. Well, go ahead. Li Qingyun waved his hand casually. Just as he had subconsciously taken away his hammer, Thor had already wanted to leave. In that case, let him go. When we go back this time, it won't be long before his mother is killed, right? Li Qingyun looked at Thor, the god of thunder, who was teleporting directly back to Asgard through the Rainbow Bridge. What's wrong with you? Banner looked at Li Qingyun, who was slightly confused at this time, and was confused again. Why is Li Qingyun so strange today? You said, if someone does something for you very diligently, and you know that his family is about to be in trouble, will you help him or not? Li Qingyun looked at Banner. Help, I must help. Banner answered without thinking, but when he does things for you, it's an exchange. You give him what he wants, and he gives you what you want. It's a pure transaction between them. Li Qingyun stated again, if something happens to Aunt Zhong's family, will you help? Banner asked back, and Aunt Zhong was the aunt who helped clean the manor before Li Qingyun made the robot. For more than a year, Li Qingyun and Banner lived here. They would definitely not be able to clean up such a large manor. Help. Li Qingyun did not hesitate. Although Aunt Zhong only came to work for him, if there was really something going on at Aunt Zhong's family, he would never stand idly by. Isn't that right, Aunt Zhong? You are willing to help, why aren't you willing to help Saul? Banner has already guessed that Li Qingyun is talking about Thor, the god of thunder. After all, there were only 3 people who made deals with Li Qingyun: Stark, Banner himself, and Thor. Stark has just experienced a desperate virus crisis, and this will be calm. Needless to say, Banner, if something happens to him, Li Qingyun will definitely take action. After all, the 2 of them are best friends. Then the only one left is Saul. Moreover, Saul has just left. Okay, it's settled. Li Qingyun no longer hesitated. Since I already had the idea of helping, there was no need to worry about it. Do time travelers have to hang high? What's the point? It's not a particularly dangerous thing anyway. After taking action, if you fail, you won't lose anything. And once you succeed, you can save a great mother. Although you won't get anything, at least you will feel happy in your heart. Let's go find someone. Once you decide, just do it. The space wormhole appeared in front of Li Qingyan, and he walked in without hesitation. Banner didn't hesitate and followed closely. On the other side of the wormhole is a university. I won't mention the name, I don't know which one it is. In the classroom, a middle-aged man with yellow hair was teaching the students. And the content of his class is wormhole theory. This middle-aged uncle was none other than Dr. Eric Selvig, who was controlled by Loki not long ago and studied the cosmic cube for Loki. Selvig. Banner immediately recognized who the person in front of him was. Drive Banner. Selvig also saw Banner, and he recognized him immediately. The two of them were friends before, but later Banner gradually disappeared from the public eye because he became the Hulk, and the two broke off contact. Next, I'm going to study some things about wormholes and celestial body convergence. Would you like to come over and help me? Li Qingyan stepped forward and asked directly. There is a big clock, and Li Qingyan knows all the knowledge about wormholes. But for the sake of safety, Li Qingyan still wanted to find one more helper when facing the celestial convergence and the Dark Elf incident. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, besides Jane Foster, Dr. Selvig seems to be the most suitable. Who are you? Selvig looked at Li Qingyan doubtfully. He can be regarded as a big shot in the scientific world, but in the scientific world, I have never heard of a person as young as Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan reported his name. Are you the one who captured Loki last time? Selvig looked at the young man in front of him in shock. At that time, Li Qingyan took Hulk and a Black Widow who was joining in the fun to deal with Loki. Selvig was in a state of being controlled by the Mind Stone, so he didn't remember much. But afterwards, after the people from S.H.I.E.L.D. revived him, they told him some things at that time. Now that he heard Li Qingyan's name, he naturally understood. Yes, it's me. Li Qingyan nodded. Okay, I'll go with you. Without any hesitation, Selvig agreed directly. Then, follow me. Li Qingyan turned around, and a brand new wormhole appeared again. What is this? Selvig looked at the wormhole that appeared in front of him, which seemed invisible but could be seen by everyone around him, and was puzzled. This is the wormhole. After Li Qingyan finished speaking, he walked in directly. Selvig listened to Li Qingyan's words, and the whole person was stunned. He stared at the wormhole and looked at it carefully, as if he wanted to see all its principles in one breath. Let's go. Banner patted Selvig gently from behind, and the doctor of wormhole theory finally reacted at this moment. However, at this moment, Selvig's eyes were burning with fire. The truth of the wormhole is in the hands of Li Qingyan. Students, the teacher is going to explore the truth. Selvig turned his head and said seriously to a group of students who had already been stunned. Then, he took a firm step and entered the wormhole. The moment Selvig disappeared into the wormhole, the whole classroom was immediately in an uproar. The students who reacted were in an uproar. They originally signed up for wormhole theory partly because of their passion, but more so just to get a major, get credits, and find a job. But at this moment, they found that theory can really become reality. At this moment, the fire in the hearts of all the students in the classroom was ignited. Selvig and Dr. Banner emerged from the wormhole. But what I saw in front of me was still a school. Where is this? Banner was a little confused. You've already found Dr. Selvig, why go to school? Are you looking for someone else? Soul, Li Qingyan replied casually, and then his eyes locked on a beautiful woman walking in front of him. Wearing sportswear, but unable to hide her figure, she is young and beautiful. I want to study science, but it's very depressing to stay with you two middle-aged and elderly uncles all the time. I have to find a young assistant, right? This was the idea that Li Qingyan suddenly had after finding Dr. Selvig. We've already traveled through time and become super soldiers. It's absolutely not okay to be an old bachelor. Jie Shaolun is still chasing 10 school beauties. I find a female doctor to be my assistant. Is this too much? Is it too much? Not too much. Not too much at all. If it comes to mind, do it. Jane Foster is definitely not to be found. But in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, besides Jane Foster, there is also a very famous female scientist. Helen Cho is not in the Marvel comics, so the person in front of me is exactly what she looks like in the movie. I don't envy the Mandarin ducks, I don't envy the immortals, I only envy the Chable every day, ahem. Needless to say, there is absolutely no need to mention the figure and appearance of the person who managed to break out in that environment. If nothing else, just like Helen Zhao, she can defeat most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Who are you? Zhao Helen, who was running over and whose heartbeat had not yet calmed down, looked at the three men blocking the road in front of her with a wary expression. The security guards who were admiring the beautiful scenery not far away were also walking towards this direction. We are all scientists. I have a way to help you complete the research on the regenerative cradle. Li Qingyan opened his mouth and directly told the key point. Helen Zhao is a scientist, and she studies nanotechnology. It is the regenerative cradle technology that created Vision's body in Avengers 2. Are you scientists? Helen Zhao was still suspicious and looked at the three people in front of her carefully. This is Bruce Banner, this is Eric Selvig. Li Qingyan pointed to Banner and Selvig next to him, and finally to himself. My name is Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan, you were the one who caused the sun to flicker some time ago. Helen Zhao obviously knew something about Li Qingyan. She and Stark knew each other. After all, they were both genius scientists in the scientific community. Moreover, the nanometer field studied by Hailun Zhao is also the new direction of the steel suit that Stark will study in the future. Li Qingyan nodded. Zhao Hailun stared at Li Qingyan, seeming to be thinking and judging whether Li Qingyan was true. Would you like me to demonstrate one to you on the spot? Li Qingyan saw Zhao Helen's suspicion. No, it's better not to use it. Helen Zhao quickly shook her head. The sun is shining. Can this be just a demonstration? Can you please respect the sun a little? So, can you come with me now? Li Qingyan asked. I have to think again. She didn't agree directly. After all, she was a woman, and she didn't originally know the three people in front of her. All right. Li Qingyan also saw Helen Zhao's hesitation and understood that normal people would not go to a strange place with you just because of a few words. This is my address. If you decide, you can come and find me yourself. As Li Qingyan said, a message was sent directly to Helen Zhao's mobile phone. We hope you can join. After saying that, he turned around and opened the space wormhole again. With Banner and Dr. Selvig looking confused, they returned to their manor. Looking at Li Qingyan who opened the wormhole at will, Helen Zhao was actually shaken at this moment. After returning home, it only took her 2 hours to make her decision. It's just that she wasn't as willful as Selvig. She settled the situation at home first and then came over. However, that is all a matter later. Li Qingyan is now taking Dr. Selvig back to his manor. Dr. Banner found it a little difficult to understand that Li Qingyan suddenly went to find Helen Zhao. Why did you suddenly think of going to find her? Banner has been with Li Qingyan during this period, and without the worry of transforming into Hulk, he also has time to study some scientific matters on Earth. He also knew a little about Zhao Hailun and knew that he was a newcomer with good talents in the field of nanotechnology. But the problem is, Li Qingyan originally only said to find one person, but after looking for him, it turned into two. And he was looking for Helen Zhao. Is there anything not to do with her? Li Qingyan asked back. No, Banner shook his head. But, aren't you planning to do something to help Thor? We suddenly found two scientists, and they were in different fields. What exactly are you going to do? What Banner really can't understand is the reason why Li Qingyan did this. I just want to find two helpers. Li Qingyan answered casually. Researching celestial convergence and wormholes, Li Qingyan can easily figure out everything he wants with the help of the big clock. But he can't do everything by himself, he still needs some helpers. However, what they deal with are all high-tech matters, and it is definitely not possible to find ordinary people. So, Li Qingyan went to find two people who are more outstanding in the field of science. In the future, he may have to go further to find more people, but he will find those people directly in China. Even if Li Qingyan can build his own civilization without relying on people, after all, science cannot stay at one stage forever. The big clock has very advanced and powerful technology, but the big clock cannot improve itself. Li Qingyan will become stronger in the future, perhaps even stronger than the strongest king of gods, Holy Kesha. But Li Qingyan has also understood that he is not suitable to be that kind of scientist. Just like Kesha and Hexi, Kesha can be the strongest, but in terms of technical research, she is not as good as Hexie. In the end, Li Qingyan still has to cultivate a group of outstanding scientific talents around him. The most advanced technology and the most powerful force can be in his own hands. But how to move towards a stronger one requires such a group of people to innovate. Brainstorming is always better than being alone. However, by then, resources must be firmly in his own hands. Never let down your guard against those who may betray you. Like Keisha letting Liang Bing go out of weakness, and the initial contempt for the god of death Karl, it must never happen. Because smart people who are not under your control will inevitably stab you in the back one day. Within a few days, Helen Zhao had arrived at Li Qingyan's manor. This originally huge manor had become somewhat popular at this time. Moreover, the scale of the laboratory in this manor has also expanded. The laboratory where Li Qingyan asked Big Clock to control artificial intelligence equipment to manufacture void engines and special alloy armor can only be owned by Li Qingyan. Banner originally had a laboratory of his own. And now, there need to be two more. One is used to develop nanotechnology and regenerative cradle for Zhao Hailun. Another is to study wormhole theory for Selvig. Because Selvig has a PhD in astronomy, his research topics include astrophysics in addition to wormhole theory. Therefore, Selvig's laboratory is in an attic on the top of the building. When you first came here, you said that it was useless for me to live alone in such a big manor. Look now. Li Qingyan looked at the workers coming in and out. These people were transporting equipment to Helen Zhao and Selvig. This manor is still very big now. Banner said. Although 4 scientists now live here, it is still very spacious considering the size of the manor. This is just for now, there may be more people moving in later. Li Qingyan currently has no plans to find other scientists. But there will definitely be more in the future. Not to mention anything else, just yesterday, after Wang Yan learned that Li Qingyan had recruited 2 new scientists, he proposed to send several professionals in the scientific field to Li Qingyan. Li Qingyan is still waiting for him to send information. If he meets the conditions, he might also be recruited. All right, Banner said helplessly. Drive Selvig said that there have been some strange phenomena in space recently. It seems that a gathering of celestial bodies is taking place. Is this related to the event you mentioned? There was no further discussion of how many people would live in the manor. Now Banner wants to know even more what Li Qingyan said about Thor before. Well, it has something to do with it. Li Qingyan nodded. Selvig said that the convergence of celestial bodies will produce a natural wormhole phenomenon. By then, planets in several different star fields will be connected to each other. Will the Earth also be connected to Asgard? After all, it is the brain of a scientist. With a small amount of relevant information and clues, the reason can be quickly found. Yes, the Earth, Asgard, and the 9 kingdoms in Nordic mythology will be connected together. Li Qingyan answered. In fact, he has always been thinking about the celestial body convergence event in his heart. Not only because he wanted to help Thor, but more importantly, it was actually for the ether particles that were about to be born. Li Qingyan now has a Tianxia sword equipped with a void engine. But Li Qingyan himself is only a 2nd-generation super soldier. It has the blessing of thunder and lightning factors in its body, giving it the power of thunder similar to that of Thor. But if he can also be equipped with a gene engine that is the same as or even stronger than the sword of Tianxia, his strength will inevitably become stronger. The power possessed by ether particles is to rewrite reality. This reminded Li Qingyan of the Void Controller. The combination of Zhe Xiaolun's anti-void ability and Ji Xin's void ability finally created the Void Controller, Shang Xin. It's a new path beyond Karl's void and Space Headmaster's counter-void. If Li Qingyan can also master the technology of the Void Controller, and upgrade it through the Big Clock, so that the Void Controller can achieve a higher computing speed than the Black Hole engine, then the brand new genetic engine owned by Li Qingyan will definitely be unprecedented, of strength. 9 great kingdoms, danger comes from these 9 great kingdoms. Li Qingyan turned his head and looked to the west. In that direction, in London's subspace, lies the ether particle, one of the infinity stones. As long as you get the ether particles, everything else will fall into place. Li Qingyan can obtain ether particles for research, and if the ether particles do not reach Jane Foster, she can avoid being affected by the ether particles and suffer from cancer, and Frigga can also avoid the attack of the cursed warrior. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone is beneficial to everyone. At the beginning, I was just thinking about whether I could save Sol's mother, but I didn't expect that I would also become a profiteer. Li Qingyan sighed in his heart. However, he wouldn't worry about it. No matter what plan he has now, at least at the beginning, he just couldn't bear to see a great mother die. She knew that she was going to die, but she still resolutely let her son return to his own life. How could such a mother ignore death? Daisy just sent a message saying that she found a strange place in London, where there seems to be an invisible space wormhole. Dr. Selvig came over. He had been organizing his laboratory, and now he received a message from Daisy Louise. In the movie, it was Daisy Louise who first discovered the existence of a wormhole in London. Of course, she only found out about it through a group of children. The big clock, Li Qingyan shouted in his mind. I have locked the target, analyzing the wormhole, and detecting other abnormal energy points in the surrounding area. The detection of the big clock is fully turned on. Li Qingyan wants to participate in the birth of the ether particle this time, and the big clock will naturally participate in the whole process. Finding Dr. Selvig is just looking for a helper. The only one who can really let Li Qingyan handle everything well is the big clock. Yeah, Li Qingyan nodded. He actually had concerns in his heart. When the ether particle was born, it chose to possess Jane Foster, and it also directly activated the self-protection mechanism to prevent all threatening people from approaching. If Li Qingyan went to get it himself, would the subspace gate still open? Or would it move to another place and choose another safe target to possess? Li Qingyan had no answer in his heart. The big clock could not provide an answer. The solution provided by the big clock is calculated based on real data and the model it records. But the infinite gems involved in this problem are not familiar to the big clock in the past. Moreover, the infinity stones have a certain spirituality, which has been confirmed by the Mind Stone. Any spiritual thing, without historical data and factual data to compare, it is difficult to make an accurate inference. I think we should go there to investigate, Selvig suggested. Go directly there, Li Qingyan pondered. The original goal is not here, why bother, it is better to let it go. In the end, Li Qingyan made a decision. Although he didn't know whether his appearance would change the way the ether particles were born, he still had to participate in this event. Crossing the wormhole, Li Qingyan, Banner, Selvig and Zhao Hailun all came together. Selvig came here to study wormholes. Banner knew that this matter was very important to Thor, and he came here because he thought Hulk could help if anything happened. As for Helen Zhao, she was purely here to join in the fun. She is engaged in nanotechnology, so wormholes have nothing to do with her at all. Daisy, Selvig shouted, and not far ahead, a very intellectual woman wearing glasses was looking back. She is Daisy Louise, a liberal arts student who worked as an intern with Jane Foster, and eventually she became a doctor in astrophysics. Compared to ordinary people, she can be regarded as a strange woman. Who are they? Daisy came to Selvig, but her eyes fell on Li Qingyan and the 3 of them. They are my friends and they came with me to study wormholes. Selvig introduced. Your friend, a surprised voice came. In the nearby street, a woman with brown hair was walking towards this side. It was Jane Foster who hurried over after receiving the news about Daisy Louise. I recognize him. When Thor came to Earth before, I was with him. Jane came directly in front of Li Qingyan and stared at him closely. He's not with me, he's here to see his brother. Li Qingyan always felt that Jane Foster looked at him as if she was jealous. My boyfriend finally came to Earth, but instead of looking for his girlfriend, he stayed in someone else's house for more than 10 days. Don't worry, he will come to you soon. Banner also spoke. He has also seen that the woman in front of him is obviously resentful towards Saul. Real, Jane Foster's attention now shifted to Banner. He was unable to come to Earth because the Rainbow Bridge was destroyed, but it has been repaired recently. So, he went to see you again. Quote. Banner suddenly realized that he seemed to have said the wrong thing. In the past, if the Rainbow Bridge was broken and we couldn't come, then forget it. Now that he's repaired, He's gone to find another man, but he still doesn't come to see him, right? A new wormhole has been detected. The sound of the big clock entered Li Qingyun's mind. Li Qingyun's expression suddenly became solemn at this moment. Li Qingyun's changes quickly attracted everyone's attention, especially when he turned around and walked towards the unfinished building next to him without saying a word. Everyone was a little confused. They all realized that there was a special reason for this. But now, no one dares to disturb him. In fact, Li Qingyun's expression at this time was a little too serious. He ignored the others. Follow the guidance of the big clock and quickly enter the unfinished building. Avoid the huge unstable wormhole in the middle of the unfinished building. Li Qingyun's goal is not a wormhole. What he is looking for is the coordinates of the wormhole where the ether particles are hidden. Right here, Li Qingyun stopped. There seemed to be nothing in front of him. But under the exploration of the big clock, there is a hidden wormhole here, and on the other side of the wormhole, there is very weak, but at the same time extremely powerful energy emitted. The energy attributes are completely different from those of the Mind Stone, but it is certain that they are of the same level. The big clock judged. Now it's right. Li Qingyun was already certain that there must be ether particles inside. It is an energy source of the same level as the Mind Stone, but its properties are different. What else can this be but another infinity stone? Moreover, at this point in time and in this place, the only things that will appear are ether particles. Without the slightest hesitation, Li Qingyun walked in directly. On the other side of the wormhole, although the environment here is very strange, it looks like a ruins. But here, people can breathe normally. Big clock. Li Qingyun tried calling in his mind. Entering another space, Li Qingyun subconsciously checked whether the big clock could still maintain contact with him. After all, the big clock is his plugin. With plugins in place, even if something unexpected happens, it can be dealt with quickly. But if there is no plugin, a huge guarantee is missing. Exist. The big clock responded. Nothing more was said. Relying on the perception of the surrounding energy at this moment, Li Qingyun began to explore. Soon, he found his goal. It was a huge rectangular stone pillar. On the stone pillars, red runes are carved. The style of the runes is exactly the same as the rune script used by Asgard. Obviously, this is what was set up by the former king of Asgard and Odin's father. This is a stone pillar used to seal etheric particles. Below the stone pillar, it is suspended. Between the stone pillar and the stone platform below, there is a suspended gap only as wide as a finger. The ether particles are within this suspended gap. Lowering his head, with Li Qingyun's eyesight, he could clearly see the state of the ether particles. The red particles that were constantly swimming were like a stream of water. This is the particle form of the reality gem. He casually grabbed it in the air, and a test tube appeared in Li Qingyun's hand. Place the test tube between the gaps, and then try to use dark energy to drive ether particles into the test tube. The drive has no effect. The big clock says it. The driver is useless, then boot. Li Qingyun directly threw the test tube back to the dark matter plane space. Stretching out his fingers, he began to directly touch the ether particles with his hands. However, this ether particle did not directly penetrate into Jane Foster's body and enter Li Qingyun's body like in the movie. Instead, as Li Qingyun stretched out his hand, it began to actively retreat. Is it because of my power that you retreated? Li Qingyun looked at the ether particles that were avoiding him. You resonate with Malekith, but don't you think the energy in me is much stronger than his? Li Qingyun said. At the same time, the dark energy in his body began to mobilize further. He is trying to use the energy in his body to integrate into the ether particles and then pull them out. However, the ether particles still did not respond. I still don't believe it. Li Qingyun's heart skipped a beat and he took out the Tianxia sword. But this time, at the moment when the sword of heaven was taken out, before he could reach out to the ether particles that were pressed under the stone pillar flew out on their own. It drilled directly into the sword of heaven and merged into the sword of heaven. Moreover, it still penetrated directly to the void engine at the core of the sword of heaven. Li Qingyun looked at the Tianxia sword in his hand in surprise. Looking at the void engine of the sword of heaven, the flowing red particles combine with the void engine. Is it because the energy comes from the same source that you like the void engine? Li Qingyun said doubtfully. Energy analysis shows that the two are not the same. The big clock said. The void engine controls the rules of the universe and produces effects conceptually. Ether particles can bend the rules and create reality. Even if the energy is not from the same source, there should be similarities that lead to such mutual attraction between the two parties, right? Li Qingyan observed carefully, and he felt that what he saw should be the truth. The big clock did not make a judgment on what Li Qingyan said. Because the big clock didn't understand what Li Qingyan said. The big clock is the pinnacle technology of the super god universe. But the infinity stones and ether particles are extremely mysterious substances in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I will conduct a detailed analysis and make calculations based on your ideas. The big clock said, and for the first time in its anthropomorphic intelligent communication method, it addressed Li Qingyan with an aggravated name. Not talking about you, but talking about you. Li Qingyan is making progress. He has rapidly evolved from the clueless rookie to a super warrior with goals, ideas, and ideas. Maybe, it's not very good yet, but if it continues at this rate, I believe it won't be long before Li Qingyan will grow up. In the super god universe, it takes thousands of years for a god to grow. Even with the guidance of teachers and the guidance of technology, it still takes hundreds of years. Even in the Void Age, a group of new gods and super warriors began to rise rapidly due to the evolution of the entire universe. But those super genes of gods have already spent thousands of years adjusting and finding the most suitable match. Li Qingyan is different from them. Li Qingyan is a time traveler, and he is also an ordinary person. In order to get rid of the plight of ordinary people as soon as possible, he became a super soldier from scratch as quickly as possible. Because he could not find the most suitable super gene, the big clock gave him the most original template. Super God Universe, the first god super gene born from the Kamigawa civilization, the super gene of space principal Kirin. Now, in just over a year, Li Qingyan has gradually found his own goal. Moreover, Li Qingyan no longer needs a big clock to guide everything. He began to think on his own, and then used the big clock to calculate the specific situation. The wormhole has fluctuated and will be closed soon. The big clock reminded. Well, go back first. Li Qingyan nodded, then turned and walked towards the wormhole. He did not place the Sword of Heaven in the dark matter plane space like in the past. Because he still doesn't know whether the ether particles that have been integrated with the Sword of Heaven will still resonate with Malekith in the dark matter plane space. The coordinates of the dark matter plane space must never be exposed. This is common sense that every super soldier knows even in the super god universe. Because the coordinates of the dark matter plane space have been discovered, the other party is likely to try to crack and invade the coordinates. Just like the treasure trove of sacred knowledge of Holy Kesha, the only person who knows it in Marrow Heavenly Court is he-she. And it was a hand that he-she was prepared to prepare in advance for the possibility that he might fall at any time. This is not a super god universe, and Malekith does not have the ability to invade the dark matter plane space. But this world is more dangerous than the super god universe. The origin of ether particles is very likely to involve other mysterious existences in the universe. Therefore, Li Qingyan must be careful. Return to the location of the wormhole and walk directly through it. As soon as he walked over, he saw a familiar figure. That was Jane Foster holding a special detector in her hand. Yes, it's me, Li Qingyan answered, and he turned back and looked at the wormhole behind him. The wormhole quickly disappeared. The wormhole connected to the ether particles is very special, and not everyone can easily reach that area. At this time, Selvig and Banner also came over. They have been looking for Li Qingyan for more than 10 minutes. Not only can they not find him, but they can't even get through on the phone. You know, there is absolutely no problem with Li Qingyan's communication. Banner has known Li Qingyan for so long, and he has never said that he can't find it. Where did you go just now? Banner looked at Li Qingyan doubtfully, and even took a look at the Tianxia sword in his hand. He understands Li Qingyan's abilities and knows that he will hide some important things in his space at almost any time. This Tianxia sword was thrown directly into the dark matter plane by Thor not long after he sent it over. But now, he keeps holding it. Went to a special subspace. Li Qingyan didn't hide it, because there was no need to hide it. I found the ether particle, which is the biggest trouble caused by this gathering of celestial bodies. It's just that it's attached to my Tianxia sword. Li Qingyan picked up the sword of heaven and placed it in front of Banner. Banner quickly adjusted his glasses and took a closer look. He saw the red particles fused with the void engine, and he sensed gamma energy as strong as the Rubik's cube of the universe. However, the form of this gamma energy released seems to be different. You said it would cause trouble. What kind of trouble is it? Helen Zhao also came up, but she didn't look as carefully as Banner did. She was just curious about what kind of trouble such a lump of something similar to nano-ions could cause. It will attract an ancient dark race, and this race wants to use these ether particles to bring the entire universe back to the Dark Age. Ha! A group of people raised their heads and looked over. If I weren't here today, it would have possessed you, because you are the most likely person to walk into that wormhole. Li Qingyan looked at Jane Foster. Jane Foster was silent. She would indeed be the most likely person here to walk into the wormhole. She also held a device for detecting wormhole energy, and as soon as she arrived here, she felt the urge to go in. However, before she could go in, Li Qingyan walked out. You said it will attract a dark race to snatch it and change the universe. Wouldn't that mean whoever holds it will be in danger? Daisy noticed another important problem. That is the danger brought by these ether particles. That's a race, and if they want to rob it, there won't be one or two people coming to rob it, right? What are you going to do with it? Banner also understood the danger of this thing at this time. You can't take it back to the manor. Li Qingyan naturally knew who was coming to snatch the ether particles. Therefore, he cannot bring the ether particles home, because that would lead to a war there. Chapter 51. The Dark Elves are a group of crazy guys who forcibly invaded Asgard. They have huge spaceships and even small combat spaceships with powerful combat performance. If they appear near the manor, not only will Li Qingyan's home be destroyed, but even the surrounding cities will probably be implicated. Li Qingyan decided to participate in this matter to help Thor avoid the tragedy of his mother's murder. But if his city suffers a catastrophe for this matter, he will never be willing. The invasion of the Dark Elves will be very fierce. We can't bring the ether particles back to the manor. Li Qingyan said, your manor is not far from the city. Starting a war there will indeed cause considerable damage. Banner agreed with Li Qingyan's statement. He also felt that he should not fight the Dark Elves there. The other party is a powerful race, and we also need the assistance of a powerful race. When Li Qingyan said this, he looked up at the sky. And when he saw it, Banner immediately realized what Li Qingyan was thinking. Didn't you say you wanted to help Thor? Why do you look like you want to ask Thor for help now? Banner thought so in his heart, but he didn't say it out loud. Because in his opinion, no matter who helps whom, this method is the best way to deal with this matter. Li Qingyan could see what Banner was thinking, but he didn't refute it. What Banner saw was what was happening right now, and he didn't know what would happen in the movie. And Li Qingyan did this not because he wanted anyone to remember his kindness, he just simply felt that he should take action. What's more, now that he has obtained the ether particles, it can be regarded as giving himself enough rewards. It depends on the inexplicable resonance between the ether particles and the void engine. There is a high possibility that there is some special relationship between the two. Maybe, Li Qingyan can also research something else from the ether particles. Walk out of the unfinished building and come directly to the street. Li Qingyan looked up at the sky. Heimdall, I know you can see it. Li Qingyan said. At the same time, in the Rainbow Bridge Transmission Center far away in Asgard, Heimdall's eyes turned to the direction of the earth. I have something important to do and need to find Thor. Please help convey it. Li Qingyan said again. Heimdall looked at Li Qingyan on the earth who was looking up at the sky, and there was a little doubt on his face. But he still followed Li Qingyan's instructions and began to send a message to Thor. He had known Li Qingyan when Thor went to the earth to find the cosmic cube, and he knew the relationship between Thor and him. Now, Li Qingyan took the initiative to find Thor, and there must be something going on. Not long after, Thor came over. Thor couldn't see the situation on the earth, but when he heard that Li Qingyan was looking for him, he realized that there was something wrong. Opening the Rainbow Bridge, Thor teleported directly to the earth. When Thor appeared, the first person to walk over was not Li Qingyan, but Jane Foster. She quickly approached, and then without saying a word, she raised her hand and slapped him. A slapping sound was particularly clear in the street in front of the unfinished building. Jane. Thor looked confused. Snap. Another slap hit Thor's other face. What's wrong? Thor was confused. He couldn't figure out what was going on. I've been looking for you all over the world, but you refused to show up. Li Qingyan just said a word, and you ran over here immediately. Am I your girlfriend, or is he? Jane said angrily, and after she finished speaking, she seemed to feel unsatisfied, so she raised her foot and kicked Thor's calf. Soren didn't dodge either. He just didn't understand what this meant. Didn't Li Qingyan have something important to do with him? Why did he come here just now, but was beaten by Jane Foster first? Ahem. Li Qingyan coughed twice, attracting the attention of Thor, who was venting his anger and looking confused in front of him. Can we discuss your affairs slowly when we have time later? Li Qingyan's words made Jane Foster understand that it was not the right time for her to vent her dissatisfaction. Saul looked at Jane Foster, who had retreated to the side. Although he was still confused, he was relieved. At least, he didn't have to be slapped anymore. What happened? Seeing that Jane Foster was not around, Saul asked immediately. This is a matter between you two, and it has nothing to do with me. Li Qingyan called Saul here. But even if Li Qingyan didn't call him this time, he would still be slapped the next time he came to see Jane Foster. This was bound to happen, and there was no way to avoid it. Then why did you come to me? In fact, Saul could still understand Jane Foster's situation a little bit. Since the first separation, he had never come to see her again until now. And he didn't come to Earth all the time, but came twice in a row, but didn't come to see her. It is understandable that Jane Foster feels resentful. For this, Li Qingyan placed the heavenly blade in front of Thor. Your sword of heavenly destruction. Thor looked at the long sword in front of him in confusion. Is there anything wrong with it? I'm not talking about the sword itself, but the things attached to the sword. Li Qingyan reminded. And it was not until this moment that Thor finally discovered the difference in the sword of heavenly destruction. That was a change in the special device that Li Qingyan installed when he got the sword of heavenly destruction. What's inside? Thor didn't know about ether particles, but he only took a look and realized that this thing was special. Ether particles. Ether particles. Thor was still at a loss. He had never heard of ether particles. But he had a hunch that this thing would have a lot to do with him, or with the entire Asgard. Li Qingyan would come to him specifically for this thing, and it must be related to this. This is what your grandfather snatched from the Dark Elves and then sealed. Li Qingyan said. My grandfather. Thor was a little confused. The lifespan of the gods in Asgard is more than 5,000 years. But for many years, there are really few grandfathers and grandchildren. Because although they have a long lifespan, they usually consider continuing the third generation after the death of one generation and the rise of the second generation. When Odin succeeded to the throne, Thor's grandfather had already died. Thor was born 1,000 years after Odin's reign. Not to mention that he had never seen his grandfather, he had never even heard of him. The Dark Elves who were defeated by your grandfather are not completely extinct. They are lurking and waiting for the birth of the ether particles. Now that the ether particles are in my hands, I am afraid that it will not be long before the Dark Elves will come to kill. Li Qingyan said in detail. And Thor, the god of thunder, gradually understood the importance of this matter. Saul already had a rough idea of what was going on this time. Ether particles, the Dark Elves. This also involves his grandfather. His father, the current king of Asgard and the father of the gods, Odin, must know about this. Let's go to Asgard. Thor already understood the purpose of Li Qingyan summoning him here. He also felt that it might be better to move the battlefield to Asgard. After all, Asgard is the land of the gods, and the power there is always stronger than on Earth. The Rainbow Bridge was summoned, and Li Qingyan, Thor and Banner were teleported out together. Everyone knew that this time they were going to fight. Although Jane Foster was very reluctant, she still did not follow. Inside Asgard's Bifrost Teleportation Center. When Li Qingyan and the others walked out of the Rainbow Bridge, the first person they saw was the Guardian of Asgard, Heimdall. His Majesty the King is waiting for you in the palace. Heimdall said with a serious expression. This Guardian of Asgard, who has the strange power to see through the universe, already knows what Li Qingyan said to Thor on Earth. Moreover, He had already reported it to Odin. Regarding ether particles, there will be a war about to happen, and Odin has to pay attention to it. Okay, Thor agreed, and then took the lead in the direction of the palace. However, when Li Qingyan walked past Heimdall, Heimdall kept staring at him. Li Qingyan frowned slightly when Heimdall looked at him like this. I don't seem to have offended you, right? Li Qingyan stopped and turned around to look at Heimdall head on. No, Heimdall shook his head. Then what are you doing? Just curious. Curious. Li Qingyan was slightly confused. I'm just curious, how did you avoid my observation? Heimdall possesses the eye of true seeing that can see through the universe. Even in the distant universe, even if there are stars separated by stars, he can still see what he wants to see. There are very few people in this universe who can avoid his gaze. And Li Qingyan happened to be one of them. Someone who could hold Mjolnir, know more about Asgard than he, the Guardian, and still escape his observation. How could Heimdall not be curious? It's very simple. I just need to create a blindfold for you. Li Qingyan had considered the attention of people like Heimdall from the very beginning. From the initial creation of the super genetic potion to the later research on the Void Engine, Li Qingyan always kept the big clock on guard. So, you are the same person as Loki. I'm not as powerful as Loki. But deception has always been what he is best at. You were wrong. Loki's methods are very bad. Li Qingyan said, but in fact, Loki at this stage is indeed very poor. The most powerful magician in Asgard, but ended up drawing a knife at every turn. He is truly a melee magician. Maybe. Heimdall did not dwell on this issue further. Odin is still waiting for Li Qingyan and the others, so he can't waste too much time. Let's go, Thor greeted. Li Qingyan did not stop any longer and began to follow Saul and the others towards the palace. However, when he was about to walk out of the teleportation center of the Rainbow Bridge, he couldn't help but look back. Heimdall is a man with the magical power to see through the universe. This ability is just a gatekeeper to Asgard. But if this ability comes into Li Qingyan's hands, it will be an extremely useful power. Li Qingyan has the ability to use wormholes. If he can see any enemy, even if it's an entire universe away, he can still open a wormhole near him. Then, quietly, a shot to the head. By then, not only the entire Earth will be under Li Qingyan's control. Even in the entire universe, no one dares to say a bad word about him. Of course, this can only be thought of. Li Qingyan does not have that ability. The big clock can control everything within a certain range, and is more powerful and precise than Heimdall. But the larger the range that a large clock can control, the more energy it consumes. If you want to control the entire universe, even if you burn up all the stellar energy in the entire universe, it won't last long. If there are 6 infinite stones to provide infinite energy, maybe it can be realized. Li Qingyan thought this, and then continued towards the direction of Asgard Palace. After walking through the long virtual rainbow bridge and passing through several defensive buildings, we successfully arrived at the Palace of Asgard. Sitting on the throne in the main hall was an old man with gray hair and beard, and one eye still covered by black glue. He wears golden armor and holds an eternal spear. He is the king of Asgard, known as the father of the gods, Odin. He was currently sitting on the throne, with his only remaining eye staring at Li Qingyan. It wasn't a completely unfamiliar look. On the contrary, he seemed to have known Li Qingyan for a long time, and towards Li Qingyan, it was as if he was looking at an old friend who had been waiting for a long time. Something weird. This was the first thought that came to Li Qingyan's mind. Thor, take Dr. Banner with you to see your mother. Odin spoke, but the first sentence he said made Thor, Banner, and even Li Qingyan stunned. He was going to send Thor and Banner away. But why? Why did Odin have to send others away when he first met Li Qingyan? Go. Odin was no longer hiding his words, and his majestic words made Thor clearly feel Odin's attitude. Although he still couldn't figure out why Odin was like this. But Thor still took Banner with him and turned to leave the hall. After the two of them had left, Odin stood up. The eternal spear in his hand gently knocked on the ground, and then the door of the hall was closed. Li Qingyan's face was solemn, but he remained calm. He believed that Odin would not hurt him because there was no reason at all. In addition, the big clock was already prepared. As long as Li Qingyan is likely to be attacked, the wormhole algorithm will take effect immediately, and Li Qingyan will be teleported back to Earth in an instant. I have been looking forward to your arrival for a long time. Odin spoke, but the meaning of his words made Thor Li Qingyan difficult to understand. When I speculated about the future countless times, Ragnarok was the inevitable ending. But one day, I suddenly felt that something was different. So, I made another prediction, and in this prediction, I saw a person who had the same divine power as Thor, but was even more powerful. At that moment, I suddenly realized that this might be the key to changing the future. Odin's words made Li Qingyan stunned. Predicted future. This means that Li Qingyan's appearance has been known to certain entities a long time ago. Odin can predict. Does the Ancient One, who can also explore the future, also know about it a long time ago? If Ji Yuyi had known about it for a long time, then everything he did might not be a secret. Why does he travel through time, and why does he have a big clock? Also, who was the person who gave the order to the big clock in the first place? Li Qingyan couldn't understand what was going on. Warlock eyes. Suddenly, Li Qingyan remembered something. That was something that appeared in a fleeting scene in the Thor movie. A treasure hidden by Odin in the treasure room, placed together with powerful artifacts such as the cosmic cube, the box of ice, and the eternal fire. Yes, the Warlock's eye also has the ability to predict the future. Odin can know many things related to the future, which is also related to this. Perhaps he just saw the future with the eyes of a warlock. Li Qingyan's thoughts began to gradually slow down. The appearance of the big clock and his time travel must not be known so easily. Even if this person is Odin, it doesn't make sense. Therefore, the most reasonable explanation is that Odin accidentally saw his own existence through the Warlock's eye, a treasure that can predict the future, in the process of studying the future. Did you see everything related to me through the eyes of a warlock? Li Qingyan looked at Odin, and the panic that existed subconsciously before was completely eliminated at this moment. Not everything, just some simple snippets. Odin answered. But even if it's just these fragments, I already understand that your existence means a lot to Asgard. I'm not an Asgardian, so why does it mean so much to you? His mood calmed down, his suspicions were confirmed, and Li Qingyan had completely returned to his normal appearance. From the moment you set foot on this land, you have changed the future of Asgard. Odin has seen the future and knows what will happen in the future. If Li Qingyan doesn't come soon after, his wife had a death crisis. But now, Li Qingyan is here, and from the beginning, he came here to save Frigga. Frigga's death was the key to Loki changing his ways. But with Li Qingyan here, even without Frigga's death, Loki couldn't be any worse. Because Li Qingyan is Loki's nemesis. At least that's what Odin predicted in the future. Is it because you predicted the future that you worked so hard to help me build the Sword of Heaven? Li Qingyan picked up the Tianxia sword in his hand. No, your Tianxia sword is entirely because Thor is afraid that you will steal his hammer again, so he came to ask me for help. Odin shook his head and said. But his answer made Li Qingyan feel a little helpless. Thor, god of thunder, really thought of himself as Thor, god of hammer. Without the hammer, he became intimidated. Thor needs to figure out on his own that the hammer is just his weapon, not the source of his power. Odin said, it's just that it will take some time for him to prepare. Aren't you worried that my intervention will result in Thor never being able to understand the truth? If this is true, it will be a blessing for him in Asgard. Li Qingyan didn't know what to say for a while. Not being able to awaken the power is also a blessing. If you think about it from the perspective of happiness alone, it seems right. It takes a painful ordeal for Thor to fully wake up. If he never wakes up in the future, it means that he doesn't need to go through that kind of pain at all. This is indeed a blessing for Thor in Asgard. But if this happens, wouldn't it mean that Li Qingyan will become Saul's nanny? He helped handle the incident involving the Dark Elves. After Odin died, Hela was resurrected, and she helped him deal with it. Li Qingyan didn't want to do this. He took action this time purely because he didn't want to see his friend lose his mother. And this matter also involves ether particles. But the next time, the goddess of death Hela appears, it will be Thor's housework. Why should I interfere in their household affairs? You still hope that Saul can wake up sooner? Li Qingyan said. Although I'm half a friend with him, I took action this time just because I happened to have my eye on the ether particles. I won't care if there is any danger next time. Li Qingyan paused for a moment, and then said again. What's going on in your family is your own business. It's impossible for me to interfere. Li Qingyan expressed his attitude. Odin could see him as the key to turning things around for Asgard. But Li Qingyan will not let himself become the patron saint of Asgard. The invasion of the Dark Elves is coming soon, and I need your Asgardian army to help fight this time. You'd better make arrangements quickly and organize manpower. Let's take care of them all at once, so I can go back to Earth and continue my own life. Li Qingyan said that he came here just to lure the Dark Elves away from the Earth. Don't worry about this, Odin said confidently. The Dark Elves will be completely destroyed this time. As Odin spoke, he stabbed the ground with the eternal spear in his hand. In an instant, the palace door opened, and both Thor and Dr. Banner turned back to look at the hall. At the same time, a large number of soldiers were quickly gathering from the square of Asgard Palace. These soldiers, who are fully armed and ready for battle, are Asgard's standing troops. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, except for the two legendary wars, the two wars with the Frost Giants and the Dark Elves, only in Thor 3 when facing the invasion of Hela did such a neat formation appear. But that time, almost all the elite warriors in Asgard were wiped out by Hela alone. Now, seeing these soldiers appearing so neatly, Li Qingyan subconsciously thought of that scene. King Odin accounts for 98% of Asgard's power, Thor accounts for 1.5%, and everyone else only accounts for 0.5%. Really, the performance of these soldiers on the battlefield. Too bad. The armies of Asgard assemble. This is a manifestation of Odin's decision to gather the power of Asgard and start a war with the Dark Elves. Li Qingyan has come to Asgard this time, so he will naturally help. Besides, those people from the Dark Elves are here for him. The target of the Dark Elf is the ether particles in Li Qingyan's hands. Asgard's early martial law made many things not develop as well as in the movie. When Algrim of the Dark Elf clan wanted to sneak into Asgard as a prisoner of war, Li Qingyan directly stopped him on the Rainbow Bridge. With his disguise, perhaps the soldiers escorted by Asgard would not be able to recognize him. But Li Qingyan has a big clock, and he has been detected by the big clock from the moment he stepped on the Rainbow Bridge. Aren't you an Asgardian? Algrim looked at Li Qingyan standing in front of him and asked. His hand had already subconsciously grasped the cursed crystal in his abdomen. Li Qingyan didn't want to stop him from becoming a cursed warrior, because he just wanted to give it a try and challenge this powerful cursed warrior of the Dark Elf clan. I am indeed not an Asgardian, Li Qingyan answered. This invasion of your Dark Elves is destined to fail. But I can give you a chance. As long as you can defeat me, I can give the ether particles in my hand to you. Li Qingyan raised the sword of heaven, and the ether particles attached to the sword were naturally seen by Algrim. Arrogant guy. Algrim dug out the cursed crystal from his abdomen. That red crystal contains an extremely strange energy. The moment Algrim took it out, the big clock had already recorded all the data it contained. In the future, perhaps Li Qingyan will be interested in analyzing and copying this energy. I'm arrogant because I have the capital to be arrogant. Li Qingyan was not brainless, nor did he insist on creating a strong enemy for himself, but he was sure of victory from the beginning. Purely physically strong, even if the cursed warrior is very strong, Li Qingyan has a way to absolutely restrain it. That is to directly transfer it to the surface of the star through a wormhole and burn it directly into nothingness. With the computing power of the big clock, so far, the only one who cannot be directly transferred through the space wormhole is Odin. Because the divine power in Odin's body is too huge, its value has reached an extremely terrifying level, and it is difficult to transfer it through ordinary micro-wormhole transportation. As for using more terrifying spatial displacement, this consumes too much energy, and Li Qingyan will never use it unless necessary. According to the records in the Big Clock database, at that time, the god of death, Karl, planned in advance in order to transfer Kesha, and even provided energy based on the Dark Nebula's 100,000 stars, so that Kesha could be transferred to the Emerald Star without being prepared. Now, Li Qingyan wants Algrim to become a cursed warrior before fighting him. It is precisely because he has absolute certainty that he does this. Then, Li Qingyan wanted to try again to see how powerful the Tianxia sword he had just obtained was. That's not to say you can't use Hulk for training. But the power of the Tianxia sword is already at the level of void martial arts. If it hits Hulk, Hulk will definitely be injured. If you don't want Hulk to be injured, you can only choose those powerful villains as test subjects, and Algrim is the first one Li Qingyan happens to encounter. For better testing, that's why he made Algrim a cursed warrior. You will regret your arrogance. Algrim crushed the red crystal in his hand hard. The next moment, a black smoke emitted from the crystal. Algrim was soon covered in black smoke. When the smoke dissipated, he was completely different. His body became taller, his limbs became thicker, and he exuded a strong aura. People could see how powerful he was with just one glance. He is indeed the strongest warrior of the Dark Elves who can easily crush Thor. Then let's try it. The void engine located in front of the hilt of the heavenly break sword in Li Qingyan's hand began to rotate at high speed at this moment. This is Li Qingyan's appearance ready for battle. It is the sword of heavenly brave, and it will burst out with void-level power. Go to hell, Algrim shouted and rushed towards Li Qingyan. The expression on Li Qingyan's face condensed, and then he took a step forward. It was only one step, but Li Qingyan's body turned into an afterimage the moment the step fell. The afterimage flashed across the location of Algrim, and lightning danced on the sword of heaven. A clear wound appeared on Algrim's neck. If he hadn't been wearing heavy armor, and his body's defense had been greatly improved after transforming into a cursed warrior, what was left on his neck at this moment might not be a wound, but a completely cut head. How did you? Aha! The sound of the long sword slicing across the body, Algrim's armor, under the attack of the Tianxia sword, was cut open like tofu easily. The muscles strengthened by the black energy were cut into a neat incision. Swish, swish, swish. Li Qingyan's attack did not stop. When he and Hulk were practicing, they were more about testing their fighting instincts, their reaction speed, and their pure strength. But now Li Qingyan asked Algrim to be his sparring partner, and what he practiced was real fighting. And fighting, if the purpose is not to kill the opponent, is not a real fight. So, Li Qingyan attacked at this moment, without any mercy, and without dragging his feet. He launched his strongest combat power now. The speed of the second-generation super soldier, the thunder power of the Tianxia sword, and the conceptual strike ability stimulated by the void engine. The reason for multiple consecutive attacks is that the material of the Tianxia sword is Asgard's Uru metal, not the original dark silver. In terms of sharpness, Li Qingyan's Tianxia sword is not as good as Hua Yi's. But because of the power of thunder, the actual power of the Tianxia sword is stronger. This is called losing something and gaining something. The attack soon stopped. Li Qingyan stood in the original position holding the Tianxia sword. His attack just now was very fast and fierce. It was so fast that the cursed warrior Algrim had no time to react. It was so fierce that Algrim's so-called invincible body and his strong flesh were completely chopped into pieces under Li Qingyan's continuous attack. From drawing the sword to putting it away, the whole process took less than 10 seconds. The last cursed warrior of the Dark Elves has fallen on this rainbow bridge. There are a large group of people watching on the left and right sides of the rainbow bridge. Thor, Banner, Sif and the 3 warriors of Asgard. They followed Li Qingyan from the beginning. Originally, they stayed here in case of emergency. They saw that Li Qingyan was going to challenge Algrim in his strongest state, and they thought that what they were about to see would be a fierce battle. But at this moment, they were dumbfounded. Li Qingyan just made one move, and it only took a few seconds to end the battle. That speed as fast as lightning, that figure that disappeared in an instant, and the sharpness of the Tianxia sword. In Li Qingyan's own opinion, the sword of Tianxia was not sharp enough because it was not an Suyin. In the eyes of Thor and others, it is an extremely sharp magic weapon. This is due to different expectations. Is he that powerful? Sif and others all looked at Thor and Banner. But at this time, Thor and Banner were also confused. This was the first time they saw Li Qingyan fighting with someone in a real sense. Before, he would train with Hulk for a long time. But no matter how you look at Li Qingyan at that time, he was not what he is now. There is no rigid battle, no back and forth. Yes, it's just one fatal move. From the first sword shot by Li Qingyan aimed at Algrim's neck. He wanted to chop off Algrim's head with a sword. It's just that because Algrim's strengthened physical defense has become stronger, coupled with the protection of the armor, Li Qingyan succeeded without a single sword blow. This is the real battle. Heimdall's expression was extremely serious. He is the guardian of Asgard and the controller of the Rainbow Bridge. He is also the person with the most knowledge in Asgard except Odin. The truly powerful warriors in the universe often fight like Li Qingyan. Either don't take action. Since you have already taken action, it is naturally based on a sure kill. If it is determined to be an enemy, then kindness to the enemy is cruelty to oneself. Stop looking at it. Li Qingyan placed the Tianxia sword in the temporary scabbard behind his back. Because the sword of heaven with ether particles cannot be put into the dark matter plane space, he has been carrying it with him during the recent period. Now that Algrim has appeared, it won't be long before the Dark Elves will launch a general attack. You must prepare in advance. Li Qingyan didn't think there was anything wrong with his fighting. He didn't pay too much attention to the comments of the people around him. It is appropriate and natural to act decisively. To lure them out, we're going to make everything look normal. Pack up Algrim's body and take it away. Everyone except Heimdall retreated into the palace. Li Qingyan started directing directly. Everyone present subconsciously started busy following Li Qingyan's instructions. Those who clean the battlefield, those who escort other prisoners to Asgard prison, and those who want to return to the Rainbow Bridge to ambush. Everyone takes action. Li Qingyan also retreated to the palace. He stood in a corridor of the palace, looking at the starry sky in the direction of the Rainbow Bridge. The big clock can detect everything happening within tens of millions of kilometers around it, and any disturbance cannot escape the monitoring of the big clock. But they still made arrangements in advance to allow the Dark Elves to enter Asgard. At the same time, it is also for precaution. What if the big clock fails to detect the Dark Elf clan's invisible ship? After all, they are also a clan of Dark Elves who can avoid the exploration of Heimdall's true-seeing eye. But it turns out that his precautions were unnecessary. The detection and monitoring capabilities of large clocks are unparalleled. The spaceship of the Dark Elves had just appeared in the nearby starry sky and was immediately detected by the big clock. The dark energy used by their spacecraft, as well as the huge size of the entire spacecraft, were all found and analyzed by the big clock at the first time. Even the big clock has accurately determined how many people are in the spacecraft and the specific location of each person. If I had a big move like Sky Blade Judgment now, I could kill them all in one move. Li Qingyan sighed, although he already possesses a void-level weapon like the Sword of Heaven. But after all, he is still just a second-generation super soldier. Perhaps his most powerful attack method now is to attract endless thunder to bombard him. But given the size of the Dark Elf spacecraft, Li Qingyan's simple attack was not enough to destroy it. If the energy is stored for a long time, once the Dark Elves see it, they will probably turn around and leave immediately. By setting up the dark matter plane, the energy gathering speed can be accelerated, and the endless thunder can also increase the thunder energy to infinity in a few seconds like Angel Yan did. The big clock immediately gave a solution based on what Li Qingyan was thinking and the questions he raised. It seems it's time to start setting up the dark matter plane space. Li Qingyan was not in a hurry to set up the dark matter plane space before. Because he has no real enemies yet. On Earth, whether it is S.H.I.E.L.D. in the past or Hydra now, they are all clowns. As for other supervillains, under the surveillance of the big clock, no one has the chance to get close to him. The Earth now is actually much safer than in the movies. Because everything is under Li Qingyan's control. But now, he took the initiative to join the war with the Dark Elves, and he found that he still needed to obtain more abilities faster. Through the establishment of the dark matter plane space, you can gain more abilities for yourself. Do you need me to start immediately and use factories on Earth to manufacture equipment? The big clock asked Li Qingyan for his opinion. Well, let's get started. Li Qingyan nodded. Then, at the same time, in his estate on Earth, the fully automatic machinery factory located underground has begun a new technological upgrade. After the technology of the entire factory is upgraded, they will start to produce more super technological things. However, Li Qingyan's attention now still has to be on the invisible spaceship of the Dark Elves that is slowly approaching Asgard. Watching them approaching Asgard, watching them separate more than a dozen small combat spacecraft from the mother ship. Everyone prepare, they are already here, Li Qingyan said, and his voice was heard to everyone at the same time at this moment. The large army of dark elves is coming. In the movie, they were caught off guard, so Asgard was caught off guard. But now, Asgard has long been prepared to take precautions, and everyone is waiting for the dark elves to throw themselves into the trap. Li Qingyan was the first among everyone to see the dark elf family's spaceship. But it was Heimdall who took action first. As the gatekeeper of Asgard, it is completely reasonable for him to be the first to attack. Moreover, the guardian of Asgard could no longer hold himself back. He relied on his intuition to feel the approach of the spacecraft. Once they were within a certain distance, he could see them clearly and launch an attack. This grab for credit is reasonable and reasonable. Li Qingyan sighed. Now in Asgard, there are many people gearing up. Thor, the Hulk, the 3 warriors of Asgard plus a Sif, all like this. Don't worry, everyone has a share. Li Qingyan could only say this in the communication. Especially Hulk, he loves fighting the most. Without Li Qingyan, no one here would be able to control him. Watching, those spaceships cross the range of the Rainbow Bridge. Seeing it, the huge mothership has also entered Asgard's territory. The last 5 seconds. As soon as the time is up, I will remove the stealth form of all their ships. Li Qingyan gives everyone a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, roar. Hulk was the first to rush out. He jumped directly on the spot and jumped to a small combat spacecraft that had just suddenly revealed its shape. Thor waved Mjolnir and flew towards the other one without any slowness. The 3 warriors of Asgard joined forces with each other, 2 of them built a bridge below, and then threw Fandral into the air with force. Sif raised her sword and waited for the dark elves who landed on the ground. The other soldiers of Asgard were also driving airships at this moment to greet the spaceship of the dark elves. What the hell is going on? Why do they seem to be on guard? Why is Asgard's shield still there, but where is Algrim? The king of the dark elves, the one named Malekis, looked confused at the moment. They had planned a well-planned sneak attack. Why did he suddenly become ambushed? Looking at the soldiers and warriors who suddenly rushed out of the building on the edge of Asgard. Look at the protective shield that has already covered the entire palace and main residential areas. Malekith was stunned. Of course, we already knew you were coming. Li Qingyan suddenly appeared behind Malekith. The king of the dark elves immediately turned around in shock. Looking at Li Qingyan holding the sword of heaven, his expression changed from shock to nervousness. He saw the ether particles on the sword of heaven. But the problem is that the ether particles are not flying towards him at this moment. Although he can sense the existence of ether particles, the ether particles' current attitude toward him seems indifferent. The strong mutual response in the past is gone. Ether, how could it? Malekith looked at the sword of heaven and then looked at Li Qingyan. Is it you? You control it. Malekith was in disbelief. It was even more unbelievable than Asgard knowing that he would invade and being prepared. This is a sacred object of the Dark Elves, a treasure that Malekith uses to change the entire universe. Why is it now controlled by someone else? It's my sword, control it. Li Qingyan did not control the ether particles. In the past, the Dark Elves poured too much into the ether particles, which made the ether particles have a great impression on Malekith, the owner. So even though thousands of years have passed between them, they still have feelings for each other. But the emergence of the Void Engine has changed some conditions of ether particles. Rather than working with Malekith to change the entire universe, it seems that the ether particles prefer to be attached to the Void Controller. Both have a certain ability to rewrite the rules of the universe. Therefore, the ether particles are more interested in the Void Engine, and naturally no longer have much affection for Malekith. Your sword. Malekith looked at the sword of heaven in Li Qingyan's hand with some disbelief. Now, your question has been answered. You have no regrets, just go to hell. After Li Qingyan finished speaking, he swung the long sword in his hand. A ray of sword energy flew out from the tip of the sword and passed directly across Malekith's throat. Although he is the king of the Dark Elves, his defense is far inferior to Algrim. After Algrim transformed into a cursed warrior, he was able to withstand several of Li Qingyan's attacks thanks to his rough skin and thick flesh. And this Malekith was just slashed with a sword and was gone. The soldiers of the Dark Elves around were all dumbfounded at this moment. Big clock, Locate all the dark elves in the spacecraft and teleport them outside. Li Qingyan ordered, and the big clock started counting immediately. The dark elves in the spaceship were all transferred to the ground of Asgard in panic and confusion. As soon as they appeared, a large number of Asgard soldiers swarmed over. If they were fighting with the Asgard soldiers in a normal state, with the weapons in their hands, they could still fight each other. But now, they were teleported out in confusion, and then suddenly attacked. They were not prepared at all. Many dark elves did not even have time to raise their guns before they were pierced through the chest by Asgard soldiers. Big Clock, can you control this spaceship? Li Qingyan did not intend to destroy this huge spaceship directly. There are technologies of the dark elves in it, and there are also some black technologies. For example, the stealth function of the spaceship, and the black hole bombs they used. The data control system of the entire spaceship has been successfully taken over. With the help of the big clock, the mothership of the Dark Elves was still easy to capture. Very good. Li Qingyan nodded with satisfaction. He walked to the front of the cockpit and looked at the battlefield outside through the glass window. The Asgard Legion, which had been waiting for a long time and had been full of energy, soon wiped out all the Dark Elves. Hulk, who had smashed 3 small spaceships in succession, seemed to be unsatisfied and roared at the mothership where Li Qingyan was. Fortunately, Li Qingyan quickly spoke up and said that he had controlled the spaceship and told him not to touch it. Otherwise, Hulk would definitely rush up and smash this huge spaceship. The huge Dark Elf mothership was hovering next to the Rainbow Bridge. Thor, Hulk and others came under the spacecraft one after another. Isn't it a Dark Elf that can compete with Asgard? How come you were wiped out by the group just after you started? The 3 warriors of Asgard are a bit unsatisfactory. After 2 or 3 days of preparation, the enemy invaded and the fight was over in just 10 minutes. The Dark Elves didn't even touch the gate of Asgard's palace. This is because we know it in advance and plan it in advance. The most important thing is that Li Qingyan directly exposed all their spaceships to us from the beginning. He even took action personally, killing the king of the Dark Elves and taking control of the entire mothership. Heimdall is still rational, and he knows the key to victory in this battle. Moreover, the previous Algrim was obviously not as weak as they had seen. If Li Qingyan hadn't found it in advance and killed it. So once he successfully sneaks into Asgard and cooperates with the Dark Elf mothership at the critical moment, he might be able to directly break through Asgard's peripheral defenses. Know yourself and your enemy, and you can fight 100 battles without danger. Li Qingyan walked out of the mothership. Why can he have such peace on Earth? Why could he fight this battle so easily? The reason for everything lies in absolute control. There is a big clock. The spaceship of the Dark Elves was seen by Li Qingyan as soon as it appeared. On Earth, the big clock can control almost all the information on the entire Earth at any time. Li Qingyan had already taken care of everything before it started to affect him. Hydra wanted to come over for a sneak attack, so Li Qingyan directly exposed him in advance because of this. Because I know it in advance, I can win easily. Li Qingyan said. This time the Dark Elves have completely thrown themselves into a trap. If we continue to fight so hard under such circumstances, then you Asgardians won't be considered a race of gods. No one in the crowd objected to what Li Qingyan said at this moment. Everyone knows the truth and understands the reason for victory. It's just that they felt a little overwhelmed because they won so easily. What are you going to do with this ship? Thor looked at the huge Dark Elf mothership behind Li Qingyan. Bring it back to Earth and study it carefully. Li Qingyan doesn't have time to study this mothership carefully yet. But he will definitely study it carefully so that he can finally record all aspects of the technology involved, which are different from super god technology, into the big clock. The power of the big clock lies in its powerful computing power and also in its huge database. Without the Kamigawa civilization's more than 200,000 years of knowledge and practice accumulation, without the space principle's tens of thousands of years of space travel, without the death god Karl's persistent study of the void, how could the current big clock provide so much help to Li Qingyan? Just the super warrior gene that Li Qingyan currently possesses, as well as the Tianxia sword in his hand, are all achieved by relying entirely on the information in the database of the big clock. Therefore, it is a very important procedure to further expand the database of large clocks. If you bring it to the Earth, I'm afraid it will directly cause a big disturbance. Thor said, this spaceship has an invisibility function. I just need to turn on this state and take it back. Li Qingyan is not worried about this problem. The mothership itself has a stealth function, and the big clock can hide the big clock from being discovered by any technological means on the Earth. Then you're not leaving now, are you? You have to at least stay and attend the celebration banquet, right? Yes, you have to stay for the celebration party. Fandral, Volstagg, and Hogun, who were collectively known as the Three Warriors of Asgard, all came together at this time. That's natural. How could you not attend the celebration party? Naturally, Li Qingyan would not resist eating at a banquet. Although he is rich now, he has no shortage of delicious food. But simply eating well is not the same concept as eating a banquet. What you want is an atmosphere, what you want is a lively atmosphere. Celebration party. Hulk was also yelling. He smashed 3 small spaceships today. Although he was not satisfied yet, he could still stretch his muscles. Naturally, I also want to have a good meal at this time. In that case, let's go. Thor shouted. A group of people walked towards the banquet hall of the palace together in such a noisy manner. Afterwards, a celebration banquet that lasted all day was carried out lively. During this period, even Odin and Frigga, the 2 kings and queens of a mortal palace, were personally present to congratulate everyone. By the next day, both Li Qingyan and Hulk had eaten and drank enough, and had a good night's rest. They prepared to set off back to Earth. Thor also asked to go with them, as he had to go back to find Jane Foster. They had been gone for more than 2 years, and when they met again, Saul was slapped twice and kicked hard. If he had left without looking back this time, the 2 of them would have completely failed. Why don't you use the Rainbow Bridge to go to Earth? Looking at Thor standing beside him, Li Qingyan felt a little confused. My father said that you will take the spaceship back to Earth this time. I am afraid it will be inconvenient for you, so I asked me to bring you the cosmic cube so that you can use its power to bring the spaceship back. While Thor was speaking, he took out the cosmic cube directly. When he saw the cosmic cube, Li Qingyan frowned. This is a hint that this is a gift from Odin. Odin is trying to win him over. Then take it. Li Qingyan took the cosmic cube. Although he knew Odin's intention, he could not refuse the cosmic cube. The big clock needs enough energy to speed up the calculation. In order to avoid consuming too much stellar energy and attracting the attention of the celestial group or observers in the universe, it is best to use the energy of the Infinity Stone as a substitute. The energy output power provided by a Mind Stone is limited. The ether particles are special, and Li Qingyan has not yet decided whether to use them to power the big clock. So, the appearance of the cosmic cube is just right for him. There was not much nonsense. Li Qingyan drove the energy of the cosmic cube and opened a huge portal directly in front of the Dark Elf mothership. Under the control of the big clock, the mothership entered the portal in an invisible state. On the other side of the portal is the space outside the Earth. Because the simulation of the big clock concealed the portal opened by the cosmic cube, and it is a distance away from the Earth, so it cannot be directly observed by humans on the Earth. As for some related artificial satellites, the big clock can directly change their data so that the relevant information will not be transmitted back to the ground. A huge portal opened by the cosmic cube. There is also the arrival of a huge dark elf mothership. No one paid attention to it. Li Qingyan and Banner returned to Earth. At this time, the gathering of celestial bodies has not ended. On the contrary, this strange phenomenon has just begun. A large number of natural wormholes appear in various regions around the world. However, without the appearance of the Dark Elves, there would be no disaster. At most, it's just some strange encounters that trigger fantastic adventures for a small number of people. Li Qingyan ignored these. He brought the huge Dark Elf mothership back to the Earth. Helen Cho and Selvig also returned to the manor. In addition, 2 young scientists who were sent here by the congressman have also arrived. Li Qingyan did not pay special attention to them, but arranged them randomly in the manor. Independent laboratories are prepared for them according to their areas of expertise. As for what they were asked to do next, as well as the communication between them and Banner and others, Li Qingyan didn't pay attention to it for the time being. This time going to Asgard, he could bring back the cosmic Rubik's Cube, which was something Li Qingyan didn't expect at first. Give me the cosmic cube. What did Odin see through the eyes of the warlock? Li Qingyan held the cosmic Rubik's Cube and felt the temperature emanating from it. He couldn't understand now why Odin did this. The ether particles are already in Li Qingyan's hands. Odin has tried to collect the infinite gems, so he must know that the ether particles are one of the infinite gems. Odin in the movie, for safety reasons, sent the ether particles to the void and stored them separately from the cosmic cube. But now, Odin gave the cosmic cube to him even though he knew that Li Qingyan already possessed the ether particles. With the addition of the Mind Stone, I now have 3 Infinity Stones in my hand. The plot development in this movie lasted for several years, and the 3 Infinity Stones that were finally revealed came into my hands so easily. Looking at the cosmic Rubik's Cube in his hand, he looked at the sword of Tiansha lying aside, as well as the mind gem in the dark matter plane space that continued to provide energy for the big clock. Originally, Loki used the cosmic cube to trigger a battle in New York, which prompted the plot of Avengers 1 to unfold. The birth of ether particles triggered a war between the Dark Elves and Asgard. The Mind Scepter would have also led to the birth of Ultron, activating the mutant potential in Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Prophecy, foresight, absolute control. Although part of it is because I am a time traveler. But the main reason is because of the big clock. Li Qingyan knew very well that the big clock was his biggest cheat. Although I haven't fully mastered the big clock yet and haven't been able to control all its capabilities. But there is no doubt that I can develop so smoothly because of the big clock. When other people traveled through time and wanted to get the 3rd Infinity Stone, they might have fought many fights, killed many people, and pretended to be fake. But Li Qingyan doesn't have that need. The existence of the big clock allowed Li Qingyan to avoid many troubles in advance. When Li Qingyan is dealing with problems, he does not need to participate in various superhero incidents. He only needs to think about how to master the power of the big clock as quickly as possible. And how to make the big clock and yourself stronger. What a technology God needs is not to fight and kill, but to study technology itself. Big clock, how much can your calculation speed increase if you add the cosmic Rubik's Cube? Li Qingyan asked. He is ready. He wants to upgrade to the 3rd generation, develop a void engine, and obtain more void matter, which is what is needed now. 3 times. The big clock answered. By combining the Space Stone with the Mind Stone, and using the power of the Space Stone to speed up energy transmission with other stars in the universe, my computing speed can be at least 3 times faster than it is now. In addition, the number of stars in the Milky Way that have been determined to be bound and absorbed has exceeded 10,000. Through space gems, it may be possible to expand to 50,000 in a short period of time. Combined with the energy of the 2 Infinity Stones themselves, the Mind and Space Stones. In the silent state, it can barely reach the normal operating mode of 100,000 stars when the big clock was in the hands of Karl, the god of death. As for high power output such as space phase shift, if arranged in advance, it can be achieved without sacrificing the life of the star. At the beginning of the big clock, due to energy constraints, there would be situations where it was necessary to temporarily mobilize the planet's internal energy when dealing with the Hulk. But now, the layout of the large clock has basically taken shape, and with the addition of 2 infinite gems, its computing efficiency has basically reached the normal level. Today's big clock can't even be said to trap a Hulk. Even starting a calculation on the world tree of the universe is already possible. That's good, Li Qingyan said. For a large clock, as long as it has enough energy, it can perform a powerful enough function. For Li Qingyan, the stronger the big clock, the stronger he is. Now there are ether particles. With a casual move, he picked up the sword of Tiansha. He can throw the Mind Stone and the cosmic cube directly into the dark matter plane space to power the big clock. But the ether particles still don't work. It's not like anyone can still sense its existence. Since Malekith's death, the induction between the ether particles and the outside world has actually disappeared. But the problem now is that the ether particles have been attached to the void engine of the Skysha sword in the form of particles. It now not only does not provide huge and unlimited energy like the Mind Gem and the Space Gem. Even Li Qingyan is not sure whether it will affect the void engine. Although the data monitored by the big clock now shows that the void engine has not been disturbed in any way, the output and operation data are normal. The ether particles stick to him, which always makes him feel a little uncomfortable. However, This may also be an opportunity to study the relationship between the void engine and the ether particles. Li Qingyan changed his mind and turned this discomfort into a state that is beneficial to him. If we can analyze the relationship between ether particles and void engines through this state, maybe when I upgrade the void level gene engine later, I can consider applying the ability of ether particles to myself. That may improve the ability of the void engine. Maybe it can also change the divine body. Danger and opportunity always coexist. When something unexpected happens, there is a high probability that there will be a surprise. The key to everything is still in your own control. The cosmic cube and the mind gem were used as reserves to power the big clock. The ether particles were still on the sword of heavenly blade, so they could only be studied and analyzed. In the next 2 years, Li Qingyan spent almost all his time in this continuous analysis and research. 3 infinity gems, setting up the dark matter plane space. Li Qingyan's work was very busy. The 5 scientists who followed him also gradually integrated into Li Qingyan's busyness. Banner's talent in the gamma field. Selvig's research on astrophysics. Zhao Hailun's nanotechnology has also matured. Dr. Wang Hyaming and Dr. Chen Li, sent by Counselor Yan, have also made amazing progress in their respective fields of nuclear physics and chemistry. Especially Chen Li, she has been studying the super gene potion that Li Qingyan had studied with Banner in the past. She has even found from the materials of those potions that 1/3 of them are used to cover up. If she is given enough time, perhaps within 1 or 200 years, she can figure out the basic formula of the super gene potion by herself. If she is given some guidance, she can do this in her lifetime. If she is given some key information, perhaps she can figure it out in less than 10 years. These are the judgments made by the big clock after analysis. However, there are 2 prerequisites. The first is that Chen Li has a long enough lifespan and has been focusing on the research of super gene potions, so that she can completely rely on herself to simulate the basic formula. But it is obvious that humans on Earth now normally do not live more than 100 years old. Even if they can really live to 1 or 200 years old, almost no one can concentrate on research in one direction for hundreds of years. The second condition is that someone gives guidance or teaching. And this is also the key that is most likely to help her achieve a breakthrough in research. However, Li Qingyan has no such plan for the time being. In the past 2 years, Li Qingyan has been immersed in his own study and research, learning a lot of knowledge recorded in the database of the big clock. Study the unique path you have taken in this world. Combine super god technology with various black technologies, superpowers and bug-level energy in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The latest data shows that your physical condition has reached a state where it can adapt to the 3rd-generation super gene. Do you want to upgrade it immediately? The voice of the big clock appeared in Li Qingyan's mind. Has it reached the stage where it can be adapted? Li Qingyan was a little excited. The upgrade from the 2nd generation to the 3rd generation is a leap forward. At the same time, it also indicates that Li Qingyan has made a lot of progress in his mastery of the big clock and his understanding of super god technology. Yes, the big clock gave a positive answer. Super genes have certain adaptation conditions for the human body, especially after entering the 3rd generation. The 1st and 2nd generations can be mass-produced through the latest developments in technology. But the 3rd generation still has many limitations. This is why Li Qingyan was promoted from the 1st generation to the 2nd generation in just 1 year, and it was only because of the fusion of Thor's thunder factor. It took more than 2 years to be promoted to the 3rd generation. This promotion was only possible with the full cooperation of the big clock and the dark matter plane space that had been constructed for a long time. Upgrade, let me feel what the 3rd generation is like. Li Qingyan was already impatient. Yes, the big clock agreed, and at the same time, a large amount of dark energy began to be mobilized. In this manner, the other 5 scientists walked out of the room and looked at the location of Li Qingyan's laboratory. They all felt the fluctuation of the surrounding energy. They had not seen the scene where the light and temperature in the space changed due to the mobilization of huge energy for a long time. All of them understood that Li Qingyan must be doing something at this time. But without Li Qingyan's permission, they could only watch like this. Super Gene System, bind the dark matter plane space. Data connection terminal confirmed. Dark matter plane structure energy, start to import into the super gene engine. This is a process of completely fusing and binding the dark matter plane with the super gene. In the past, Li Qingyan used pure his own power when he fought. When the terminal connection is completed, his energy will be directly bound to the entire dark matter plane space. As long as the connection between the dark matter plane space and the super gene is not cut off, Li Qingyan can obtain a continuous and unlimited energy. This is also the true meaning of achieving eternity based on energy. If the energy is not used up, you will never die. Even if you suffer a serious injury, even if the body is pierced and the heart is broken, it can be healed quickly with the supply of energy. Of course, the third-generation super soldiers are not invincible. For example, a fractured wound is difficult to connect back. If the fracture is still a vital part of the body, it can be directly fatal. For example, if someone cuts off the head with a sword, because the head is separated from the body, part of it cannot obtain the replenishment of energy from the dark matter plane space, and that part will naturally die. If the vital part of the body dies, the overall function of the super soldier will not be able to operate, so he will die. As for injuries such as piercing the heart and God Killer number 1 piercing the head, because the whole body is still connected, it can be replenished by drawing energy from the dark plane space through other super gene engines, so it can recover quickly. Fengxing, who was shot in the forehead by God Killer number 1 but was still alive and well, but died completely after being chopped off by Thornton, is the best example. It seems that I don't respect this angel Fengxing, but she is indeed a good example. Of course, if it is upgraded to the 4th generation of Divine Body, it will be different. The 4th generation of Divine Body has reached the atomic level. The energy of the dark matter plane space can be directly supplied to every atomic cell in the body. Therefore, even if the body is cut into many parts, he will not die. Moreover, according to the original setting of the data, the body is a complete whole in the dark matter plane space. Therefore, even if the cut part of the body is transferred to a far place, it will still fly back by itself, overlap with the main body, and restore to its original appearance. The technology of the 4th generation of Divine Body is also in the database of the Big Clock. However, Li Qingyan cannot upgrade to that level now. At this stage, having the 3rd generation is already very good for Li Qingyan. The upgrade of the 3rd generation super soldier has been completed. But Li Qingyan's upgrade process is not over yet. The computing power of the Big Clock has been greatly improved because of the addition of space gems and the binding of more stellar energy at the same time. In the past 2 years, it has already collected more void matter. Based on the void technology possessed by the Big Clock, Li Qingyan naturally prepared the upgrade plan of the void-level super gene engine as soon as possible. Now that he is upgrading to the 3rd generation super soldier, he naturally has to install this void engine in his body as soon as possible. Although it is not yet in an activated state, it can be used as a means of saving Li Qingyan's life. When he is fatally injured, he can recover by passively opening the void engine. Even if he is not fatally injured, if his own strength cannot solve the crisis at hand, he can still choose to activate it actively to obtain more powerful energy. Even in the end, he doesn't need to use these at all. Based on this void engine, he can still directly upgrade the black hole engine after obtaining black hole matter. In Li Qingyan's plan, through the Big Clock, the best state that Li Qingyan can get is the black hole engine and the 5th generation of Divine Body. This is the latest and most advanced technology developed by the god of death Karl. Although Li Qingyan still wants to go further, he obviously can't do it at present. When he can't do it, he should be down to earth and aim at what he can see. As for wanting to go further, wait until his horizons are broader and his knowledge is richer, and then slowly consider it. This is a step-by-step process and the safest approach. The void engine has been installed. The current state is not turned on. The notification information of the Big Clock came, and Li Qingyan's upgrade finally completed the last step. He can feel the change of energy in his body at this moment. It is an extremely abundant feeling, as if no matter how much he squanders, the energy in his body can never be consumed. But what really makes him most happy is his current state of using energy and his application of dark matter plane space. In the dark matter plane space constructed for him by the Big Clock, there are now many devices and functions. However, as a 2nd generation person, he cannot fully exert these abilities. But now, he can drive them immediately with just a thought. Wormhole barriers, solar flares, energy conversion. Li Qingyan has all the combat methods commonly used by super warriors in the super god universe. Moreover, in addition to these simple abilities, there are some deeper things. Some of them can be recognized by Li Qingyan, which are the things of Tiandao Liang and Melo Tianting. Li Qingyan can also imagine the source of these technologies. In the process of studying the void, in order to push away the biggest stumbling block in front of him, Holy Kesha, he once studied the super genes and some abilities of angels. Later, in order to master the driving of stars to bomb black holes, the death god Karl also asked the Teodi Legion to capture the sunlight Lena. In the negotiation with Pan Zhen, the death god Karl also obtained some of the technology of Tiandao Liang. In addition, the abilities and technologies of all the super warriors of Shanhe civilization are in the big clock. The third generation of super soldiers. Li Qingyan raised his right hand, and a golden sphere appeared in his hand. This was a flare light ball formed by the introduction of stellar energy in an instant. The energy contained in this light ball, once it explodes, is definitely no less powerful than a nuclear bomb. Now Li Qingyan is a person who can really make a nuclear bomb with his hands. It's just a part of the technology of the sun's light that can achieve this level. If it is the real sun's light, what kind of existence would it be? Li Qingyan sighed. Although he is confident that with the assistance of the big clock, his potential and strength are definitely not inferior to the gods of the three major god-making projects. But there is no doubt that at the starting point, they are better than themselves. The power of the galaxy, the god of war of the star, the light of the sun, the rose of time and space. Each of them was born after the Super God Academy spent 10,000 years of research and cultivation. Each of them, from the moment they became super soldiers, has mastered very powerful abilities. Li Qingyan is different. His super gene is the most primitive. His ability needs to be continuously supplemented in the future to be improved. However, Li Qingyan is not unfortunate. On the contrary, he is very lucky. He has been bound to the big clock from the beginning. And the world he lives in is a very magical world. In this world, there are too many mysterious powers. Now Li Qingyan has only integrated one of them. That is the power factor of Thor, the god of thunder, who is an Asgardian Aesir. Li Qingyan is not just a super soldier in the simple sense. He can actually be regarded as half a god. A super soldier with divine power. Among the 3,000 supernatural factors, what other factors are suitable for me to integrate? Li Qingyan asked. He wanted to further improve his strength. Moreover, after upgrading to the third generation, his body can already withstand more superpowers at the same time. There will be no conflict between them, nor will they become a burden to each other because of too many types. For Li Qingyan, he still has at least 4 supernatural factors that he wants to obtain. Chaos magic, celestial gene, phoenix force, and fairy force. Among them, only chaos magic and celestial gene have been confirmed to exist. Phoenix Force and Fairy Force have both appeared in Marvel Comics, and they are called the 3 major forces of the universe together with chaos magic. But so far, they have not appeared in this series framework of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Li Qingyan has not been able to find their traces through the big clock. As for the celestial gene, this is the most accessible to Li Qingyan at present. It is hidden inside the earth. As the managers of the universe, the Celestials have a very deep relationship with eternity, and they have a great connection with the multiverse. Moreover, the Celestials themselves are very powerful, just like the Judge Elysium, whose huge body exceeds the stars like the Earth by too many, and its power can easily destroy a starry sky. Although, Li Qingyan currently has very little information about them. Most of them are obtained through simple information introductions before the time travel, or through analysis of some clips in the movie. But this does not prevent them from becoming the target worthy of Li Qingyan's attention at present. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.